How hard is it to win the main event of the World Series of Poker?
So the main event of the World Series of Poker is the hardest event to win simply because of the sheer size of it. You know, you're talking 8,000 players, right? And a lot of landmines. And frankly, there are so many players that you've not played with before, too. You play these high roller events, like these super ones, you get 30, 40 people, you know everybody, right? So you have an idea. You sit at the main event, you don't have any idea. This guy wearing a Philadelphia Eagles jersey and sunglasses, and he just raised you big. I don't know this guy. I don't know what he's about. So there's a lot of it's grueling too. You know, you're 7-8 days where you're in the blender, as you might say. So
what's the structure? So it's $10,000 buy-in or something like that, and there's a bunch of tables, and you just keep playing. And you when is it over for a single table?
The way that it works is this. So there's, let's say, 8,000 players. And the way the main event works, unique to others, is there's various day ones you can play, right? So a day one, you're going to play from noon till like midnight, right? If you're still in, you bag up your chips and you'll come back for day two, okay? There's 4 different day ones, right? Now they'll all combine essentially to play on a day two. And at the end of the night, they redraw the tables. So you don't just win your table. If players get knocked out, tables break, they continue to be replaced. So you start with 8,000, then, after day one, you've got 6,000, then you do the same, you play, it's like a 12-hour day, and you slowly whittle down. Day 3, day 4, you're in the money, and then you continue to progress. And then what they do now with the final table is they because they were trying to do this for TV, these final tables can take, 12 hours to play. And what we were finding was, you start the thing at 5 p.m. and it goes till 8 a.m. And nobody's watching anymore. So they separate into 3 days now. And so you're talking now, it's like 6-7 days to get to the final table and another 3 days to play it. So you're under, you're grinding for, a week and a half.
But most of the time you're playing against people you've never played against before.
Especially early on. Yeah. And then by the end, who knows, rarely do you see in the last 100, you usually see some notable names. And then in the last 27, you might see 1, maybe 2. Final table, maybe 1. But often it's going to be, some players you've never heard of before.
Is there strategies that maximize your likelihood of having a chance?
Yes, absolutely. I think the World Series of Poker main event is a unique animal in that, we talk about game theory and all that kind of stuff. If you're focused on that when you're playing, you're really not playing well, right? You need to just exploit. Because you're going to have a lot of people who see this as a bucket list item. They just want to play the main event of the World Series. And they might be scared. They might be nervous or whatever. You don't have to worry about being balanced, right? Oh, I have to make sure that I'm balanced. No, you don't. You might never. You're playing with this guy now for 3 hours. You might never see him again. So just make the play that makes sense for you, right? So yeah, you're going to. I approach that event very differently than I would playing against the high roller players that I play with today.
Does that mean more aggressive, essentially?
Less, actually. So when you play against really good players, you have to take small plus EV scenarios where you push the envelope and you're playing really aggressive. You're bluffing off your stack. You got to do this. You got to focus a little bit more on being balanced because otherwise, you're not going to beat these guys. Whereas if you're playing with amateurs and you're playing with regular players, for the most part, risking all your chips on a bluff, probably don't need to do that. You don't need to do that nearly as much. You can probably slowly but surely build your stack without taking, those high risk, high variance situations because you'll find better situations.
What mistakes do amateurs usually make in tournaments like that? Are they over bluffing?
Well, I think amateurs generally, the biggest mistake they make is they think that pros are bluffing more than they are. So a pro will bet all his chips on the end and I don't know, maybe, it's Phil Ivey, maybe he's doing some crazy stuff. He's like, probably not.
Yeah.
He's probably just got it,
And then they lose all their money by calling or going all in as well. And so the right thing is to be more patient. So amateur is too impatient, or just bad reads.
So all the amateurs are built different. Some of the amateurs are just too weak and passive. They're just waiting for the nuts,
Yeah.
And then the pros, everyone notices that, and then when they make their big hand, they don't get paid anyway. So in order to win the main event, you have to have some components of your game that are aggressive. It's very unlikely to expect to just get the cards the whole way and just always have the best hand. You're going to have to find ways to win pots that, where you don't have the best hand.
How do you win Final table.
The final table is unique now, especially because you're talking about the way that poker works in tournaments is that if there's 7 people left and you have just you're very short on chips. But if one other player goes out, you just make like $300,000 for folding, like just for sitting out, right? The term for that kids use is ICM, independent, chip model, right? Where it talks about the value of each chip. Where what happens, what we see now is, let's say one guy has a big chip lead, and there's another guy who's second in chips, and there's a couple that are short. These guys in the middle, they just play super tight, and they wait for the little guys to go, while the big stack is just pounding them because he can afford to, right? He knows that people are handcuffed. So let's say I had 10 million in chips and you have 9 million in chips. And these guys have little chips. If I go all in on you, are you going to call me and risk guaranteed pay jumps of moving up a few spots? So really the question comes down to are you the type of guy who just wants to inch up, or are you going to go for it? And you're going to go for the win. I think ultimately there's some value in being the guy who says, I don't care if I come 7th. I'm not worried about going from 7th to 5th. I'm here to win. And
so you're saying the guys that win will often be the ones that call there. So they're not just bullying the small stacks. They're the ones that are willing to risk it, right? So there are some people who, if there's 5 left, and they're third in chips, and there's 2 guys very short, and they'll have ace king, and someone moves it, they'll just fold. They fold the hand because they want to wait for those 2 other players to get broke, and that way they make actual money. So I guess the thought process between winning first place and winning the most amount of money are different. They're conflicting, right? Because in order to win if your focus is only on winning the tournament, you will make mistakes financially where you had guaranteed income for just folding, right? Let's say a guy has 1 chip left, 1 chip, and me and you have good chips, and I go all in with you and I lose. Now that guy, got the guaranteed, he got the pay jump that I wouldn't have got. So there's some extremely stupid mistakes you can make from a financial perspective, but it's often at odds with, giving yourself the best chance to actually come first. And in a tournament, especially the main event, especially the final table, it's all about coming in first.
Well, I know, because most of the people who make it, so when you play these high rollers, these guys are accustomed to playing for 100,000, 200, they're accustomed to this kind of money. So they're going to play, right? For the most, but you're talking about guys who bought into a $10,000 tournament, maybe never had $100K cash in their life. And now they're sitting there and it's 1 million for 5th and 2 million for 4th. So they don't want to be 5th. They're just going to sit there and go, I don't want. So they'll be under more financial pressure because they're not your typical high roller type player.
Are you still able to find the guts to take big risks?
Yeah. See, I'm trying to win. I think that gives me an advantage, frankly, where I might make decisions that are financially suboptimal because I'm trying to win, but there's also an inherent advantage to that. Again, something I watched and learned from a guy like Michael Adamo, where he takes advantage of these people playing so passively in these spots. Where he's like, I'm not trying to come. I'm going to win. I'm just going to bulldoze you because I'm not worried about the small financial mistake of a pay jump.